Hello and welcome to Fireside MSP, your go-to podcast for all things tech in the managed services world. I'm Trevor Mansell, VP of XenTegra Managed Services.
And I'm Brian Clark, Chief Architect and Technology Officer at XenTegra.
Whether you're a tech guru, a business leader, or just curious about the world of managed services, there's a seat by the fire with your name on it.
So sit back, relax, and tune in while we spark up some tech talk. Welcome to Fireside MSP. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Fireside MSP. Today, we have a special guest panelist, Mr. David Swanzy, comes to us from the architecture team and is responsible for assisting our customers with both the implementation and execution of disaster recovery plans. So big old hello there, Mr. Swanzy.
Hey, thanks, Trevor and Brian, for inviting me on, and excited to talk about disaster recovery and our Nutanix solution.
A riveting topic, I'm sure, for many people. Trevor, I know that you are just boiling at the brim here with a bunch of questions that we've gotten from our customers about disaster recovery. Do you want to go ahead and kick us off with some?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hey, I think we've all, and I think you probably want to tell a story, kind of an internal story about our DR experiences this week. I think DR is top of mind, not only because we do a lot of DR from a hosting perspective, and so we're helping and executing DR strategy for a lot of people on a daily basis. But we had I don't know, Brian, you want to give us tell everybody what actually we had to deal with ourselves this past week?
Absolutely. It's a great story, and it's really invigorating for the team. Really proud of how we handled it. But we did have a customer, one of our customers, our hosted customers, that lost. They had a total data center blackout. Right, fiber was cut, which is very impressive to cut 2 lines of independent fiber, but it happened, and we had to initiate a unplanned failover event. What was really interesting about this is that the customer was brand new to the disaster recovery environment, and we haven't actually executed an official DR test. So we were kind of doing things off the cuff, but because we've had so much experience with other customers and doing these failovers, it was a simple matter of calling the on-call support. Actually, in this case, it was Mr. Swanzy. He hopped on with the customer, and we failed them over from the East Coast data center to the West Coast data center in under 10 minutes, and they were back online. There's a lot of technologies that made that possible, Nutanix being the principal technology, but also Citrix Cloud. They are a VDI desktop as a service consumer from Citrix, and using the Citrix Cloud product with the control plane in the cloud made that process very, very easy. If you've ever had to use Citrix before, on the on-premise version, it's a little bit more complex, particularly with back-end databases that you just have to manage, and having that managed through Citrix Cloud really made that process seamless. So in under 10 minutes, that customer was fed over and happy, and they were very impressed.
Dude, yeah, and they're staying over there all week, and they are running with no issues whatsoever.
Awesome. No, that is exactly what marketing usually tells you how DR is going to go, right? I mean, so I guess that being said, like that is exactly how we would want every DR failover to happen, right? What do you think that looks like for the average average customer out there? I think DR looks different for a lot of people, right? Sometimes if you've got a lot of different applications and complexities, large 100 sites, 1,000 site type of environments, it's going to be more challenging and difficult to execute on DR potentially, right? So, but there's a lot of customers out there that have they have their local backup, and they might have a backup to S3 or Wasabi or something like that. What do you think that looks like? I mean, what do you think that situation would look like for them?
Multi-day recovery time if the data center hadn't gone back online, and that actually it's a very old school mindset. A lot of the executives and leadership in companies grew up in an era of disaster recovery where it was a grindy, time intensive, labor intensive, and cost expensive process to do disaster recovery correctly, right? The infrastructure required alone was not feasible for a lot of customers because of the increased cost for it, not let alone having to touch every single server and device and re-IPing that. So I think a lot of people are very scared of doing disaster recovery for those reasons. So and if you're not on that spectrum, you're on the spectrum of, well, we're a brand new company and all of our software is SaaS, so it's Microsoft's problem if Office goes down, right? Or Salesforce or something like that. So the mindset isn't really defined. There's a lot of different aspects to disaster recovery between things like on-premise data centers and cloud, and how do you bring all that stuff together. So, generally speaking, I think most people just say, you know what, I'm going to check a box on the form here and say I do offsite backups. And if the time ever comes that I have to do a disaster recovery event, well, I'll just bite that bullet when it happens.
What are people doing? Like, so, I mean, SaaS absolutely simplifies it, right? So, but what does that really look like if they do have a failure for like 365 or I don't know, Salesforce, ServiceNow, one of these big platforms? Like, what are people doing for DR for those type of environments?
That's a great question. And it's not just about what am I doing when those SaaS platforms go down, but a lot of those SaaS platforms rely on some on-premise infrastructure for things like single sign-on through conditional access policies, right? So even you might be accessing the SaaS service or a service through a provider, but you're going through some kind of on-prem infrastructure to do authentication, to verify conditional access rules. Actually, David here runs our own Island browser software. He's the admin for it. And we had an outage ourselves when our data center went down, and we used our single sign-on through our data center to access Salesforce. And so for all intents and purposes, for us, Salesforce was down. And how did we approach that, David?
Yeah, so with Island, it's great. I was able to log into their management plane, and we run connectors to route all that traffic, and I was able to flip that off, and it was like 11 p.m. So thankfully, none of the sales guys were trying to check anything, but to get them back up and going.
Yeah. So, and we've actually took that as an action item to deploy additional connectors in our multiple data centers and even Azure to reroute traffic as one independent link goes down. We can fail over to another location. In regards to if the actual platform dies, it's a great thing that we're ServiceNow and Salesforce and Microsoft partners. We can get direct communication in faster than normal consumers can to those companies to figure out what the problem is, maybe reroute to a different instance in cases like ServiceNow. So there's some options out there, but having those cloud SaaS-based products, you do run that risk of when they have an outage, you have an outage.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I guess there are backup solutions like Keep It that we use and recommend as well.
Totally.
For some of those, right? Not all of them, but Salesforce and 365 definitely got those covered. But awesome. Well, hey, this is not supposed to be necessarily a XenTegra advertisement for DR as a service, but I think it's definitely, I want to make sure that we kind of cover what we're doing in that space so everybody's aware. But we're super focused on, we help customers with DR solutions across different platforms for sure, but we are, as it relates to our DR as a service, we've got all our focus is around Nutanix. We've worked with Nutanix over the years, and their XyLeap team actually to develop our service. And I don't know, Brian or David, you want to tell us a little bit about kind of what that looks like for customers today that are subscribing to it, and how that protection looks compared to maybe other solutions.
Yeah, sure thing. I can take that one. So start at the base level. Yeah, like you mentioned, we use Nutanix as our disaster recovery platform, which is a hyper-converged, all-in-one hypervisor platform. So we're able to use also the VPC technology for networking and map all the networks for a customer over, replicate their VMs, and it's literally, when I popped on at 10 p.m. Sunday night, it was literally clicking 2 buttons total One, to fail over their file server with Smart DR, another service that's in our disaster recovery. Clicked failover, and then popped into their recovery plan. Clicked failover, went over, no issues.
Hey, David, you do the execution, but you also do the planning and implementation.
Mm-hmm.
How many customers do we get that you are given a current DR plan with a current list of all their servers, all their applications, how they work, who owns them? How many customers are ready and prepared already before they subscribe to the service?
About zero. Yeah, and most don't have anything in place, or I mean, we have one customer we're onboarding who had they had it in place but never tested it. It never worked. So that's just as good as nothing in general. So yeah, when we're onboarding and making sure all their VMs are replicating, their recovery plans would replicate over. We also implement quarterly testing in that as well. So they're going to know that when an issue happens, whether somebody goes and cuts their fiber line or an asteroid hits the data center, it is a tested, tried and true solution.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. As far as like the amount of time that it takes to fail over, I know, if we talk to executives and they, if you ask them what they need in a DR, they need seamless failover, right? They need, zero downtime. That's possible in a lot of cases, but obviously super expensive to achieve, an active zero type of DR. But what do we do in that area, like as far as our offerings of how, what do the RPOs and RTOs look like, as it relates to how we deliver our DR as a service?
Yeah, customers have various RPOs. We go over everything they want to replicate. They pick if they want near sync 1 hour RPOs, 12-hour, 24-hour, depending on the server, depending on the workload. And those are just baked in to those protection plans and that recovery plan. So, and even our networking team's done some awesome work this week, and a lot of it was we would fail over, then we have to go flip the routes. So, they're pointing at their data center, we need to point them at ours now. And with our fun on Sunday, it got our brains turning, and our network team even is getting that automated, and that's going to take another 5-10 minutes off that so that customer can just go log right in, don't know anything happened.
Do that. Yeah, that's impressive. That's
So,
awesome.
Trevor, I'd like to make the point that as a service provider that provides disaster recovery as a service, every customer benefits every time we add a new customer, right? It's like a pool of knowledge. One customer, it's a snowball effect. We learn, we adapt, we improve. So the fact that we can take the improvements from one customer and apply them to all customers, I think, is a huge bonus to partnering with us. Not just from the fact that we've gotten more experience as every day goes on, but we also do it all the time, right? And DR is super scary, right? The fact that you're moving data typically from one side of the United States to the other, is that data safe? Is it secure? Is everything accounted for, right? There's a lot of admins out there that are very leery of pressing the button because they're not sure what's going to happen when they press it, after they press it, and if they're going to be able to fail it back. So, I think partnering with us and consuming our solution really helps remove that level of risk and anxiety for a lot of these admins.
Yeah, it wasn't just 2 attempts to get to 10 minutes, that's for sure. First ones took a little bit longer, but every time the onboarding shorter, the recovery when we run these tests, we're shaving minutes off every single time we test. I think I have 3 in the pipeline in the next month and a half tests to run. So
totally true.
Yeah, throughout my years just working with different customers, and as it relates to DR, what I found is, like, if you're in the finance world, banking, healthcare, a lot of these, they have, they dedicate a pretty good chunk of money to DR because it's, critical, whether it's lives at stake or, it's a, full banking system, right? So, and they put a lot of money in order to do that. What are we doing to make it more affordable for just people that don't have that budget to basically duplicate their data centers? Like, Brian, I don't know if you want to talk to that.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff that comes from that mindset. The biggest thing I can say is that over time, as we've developed the solution and worked with customers and grown it, the experience levels have really gotten to the point now where we're one of 4 partners that Nutanix trusts to do this partnership with, right? And so we have a lot of talent, and we're growing a lot of talent, and we're developing a lot of new solutions in tandem with Nutanix, right? So there's a lot of ideas going on behind the scenes. We've got a direct pipeline into their product management on how things should work, improvements to the solution, making it more cost affordable for customers, which is probably the biggest push that we are doing as an organization, is how can we make this awesome solution available to everyone for all budgets. So there's a lot of good stuff coming down the pipe and how we're approaching that.
Cool. So is there different levels of service that you can get?
Absolutely. We start. I think David talked a little bit about how we have the different RPOs. Those are really the kind of the basis for the different levels. The base level is a service that we offer actually through Veeam as a Cloud Connect partner. We call it ARC. And essentially, we are able to store your offsite backups. So rather than having to restore them yourself, we can restore them directly into our cloud. It's a 24-hour turnaround for customers that are really 9 to 5 shops, but it's very cost effective because you're not paying for that Nutanix licensing and compute 24/7. On top of that, we do have universal SKUs, Pro Plus, and Ultimate, that have different degrees of horsepower, NVMe, kind of that stuff behind them, that to associate with those higher demands for higher, or I guess technically lower RPO RTOs. And then finally, we do offer the ability to consume our services to deploy your own instance of this solution in your own data center or in the public cloud. So there is quite a few different options out there to fit every budget and every customer type.
I love that. I love it. And I think our experience has been that if we're able to get in there and do what we do, that we can give them kind of the best of both worlds for someone that doesn't have a bank-sized budget. So no, that is awesome. All right, I don't know. Time check. We got a few more minutes here. What are people struggling with out there as it relates to this? I mean, I know we've talked about some of this stuff, but like what are the top things that we've got to, that, and maybe they know they have a struggle, maybe they don't, right? Because I mean, a lot of times, hey, if your primary data center is working great, you might get really comfortable with not having DR potentially, right?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to get comfortable with it. And so, David, we took you from never having done a disaster recovery scenario to now you solo them, right? You all the way from onboarding to delivery, and the only way to really get to that level of comfort was doing it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And you've done it not by yourself, but with our customers as well. Can you give a little insight into? I like to say that failure is the key to all innovation, right? And not every disaster recovery test, particularly the initial ones, are successful. And can you kind of explain to our audience here that how testing consecutively over time really builds that level of confidence in the support and services that we offer?
Yeah. Like this, the customer we just had on Sunday, we actually had run a test about a month ago, and ran into an issue where their networks didn't map. So we backed out, but immediately went and fixed that. So when I popped on Sunday night, really glad that just worked. But if we had never run that initial failed test, instead of 15 minutes for them to be logging back into their Citrix boxes, we would have been on for hours spinning our wheels trying to find what's wrong. And that's the case with all of them. I mean, the first few, a couple hours, you get them failed over, you start digging for the issues, but once it's all in place, it's cut down every single time, and usually quite dramatically on the troubleshooting after and just handing off to them.
They are called tests for a reason, people, right? They're not supposed to be
Right.
perfect. Also, Trevor, getting to this level of what are people fighting every day when it comes to disaster recovery? Getting comfortable with the solution, I think, is probably the most important thing. And then making sure that it's just as good, if you can make it just as good in failover as it is during production. Right? If you have a failover or a disaster recovery solution and your users can't work, even though you have it, what's the point, right? And so we want to make sure that customers can work the way that they're supposed to, with all the tools and resources they need to get their jobs done.
Yeah, no, I think that's huge, right? And not necessarily, if you're not using it, if you're not, like you said, if you're not testing it, there's no way to really achieve that. It doesn't sound like so.
Mm-hmm.
There's one final thing that I think is important to talk about, and that's the cost. Again, the shameless plug for our solution, but we do offer active at no additional charge. So a lot of customers are replicating their workloads, but they're also running hot and warm workloads here as well, right? So, and that just reduces down failover time even more. So for Citrix, they run cloud connectors. The most common component that we see people run extra copies of are domain controllers, right? You can run those. We don't charge you by the hour. We don't charge you for running individual virtual machines or anything, right? It's a flat cost whether you fail the workload over or not, which means you can run your hot and warm workloads over here, and have them staged and ready to go, right? Which really reduces costs and gives you that much more flexibility, and you can show a return on investment immediately, versus on a biannual basis when we do a test. So there's a lot of intangible value.
Yeah, and the active part, that's good to bring up, because even our customer who was, quote, down hard with their data center, since we run them in an active setup, they could still go log in to Office or do some basic functions. It's nice to having just a little bit of resiliency, even if the rest of their servers were offline.
Yeah. So Trevor, I do think we're out of time here, so I'm going to wrap us up. I do want to reach out to anyone that's listening to this podcast and just ask you a couple questions. When was the last time you've done a disaster recovery test, right? And if so, is it documented, right? Do you have a plan? If you don't, I highly recommend that you get your stuff together, write it down on paper, write it in a notepad, get something on paper and let people know. We're always available to assist our customers however we can. Disaster recovery is something that we specialize in and we're very proud of, and have the numbers to back it up. But please, write your documentation down and do a test today, and you'll save yourself some regret later on. That said, thank you from all of us here at XenTegra for listening to Fireside MSP. Have a great day.